It is April 26, 1986. In the city of Pripyat, a Soviet utopia, life is normal. Children are asleep, dreaming of the brand new amusement park, set to open in just a few days. 5 kilometers away, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the night shift of reactor number 4 is running a safety test. A test, ironically, designed to see what would happen in a power failure. They are about to find out. At 1:23 a.m., the test goes catastrophically wrong. A sudden, uncontrolled power surge. An emergency shutdown fails. The operators watch in horror as the dials spike. Then, the first explosion, a steam blast, rips the reactor apart. Seconds later, a second, more powerful blast. A hydrogen explosion hurls the 2,000-ton steel lid, the upper biological shield, into the air. It flips and lands jaggedly back into the reactor's heart. A column of fire, infused with the reactor's graphite core, rockets 1,000 meters into the night sky. It's a beautiful, mesmerizing, lethal blue. This is not a fire. This is an open nuclear volcano, releasing a poison that will be detected as far away as Sweden. The world's worst nuclear disaster has begun. First alarm sounds at 1:28 a.m. Firefighters from Pripyat and Chernobyl, led by Lieutenant Vladimir Pravik, are dispatched. They are told it is a simple roof fire on a turbine hall. They arrive and they see the truth is far worse. The building is gone. They see the blue light. They see chunks of burning metal and black rock littering the ground. This rock is graphite from the reactor's core. They don't know. They have no high-level dosimeters, only standard fire retardant uniforms. They climb to the roof. The heat is immense. They kick the graphite chunks aside with their boots. They report a metallic taste in their mouths, like pins and needles on their skin. Their faces tingle. Within 20 minutes, the first men are vomiting, collapsing. Their skin is turning a deep dark red. Meanwhile, in the control room, the supervisors are in shock and denial. They report a radiation level of 3.6 Roentgen. It's a lie, born of panic, or perhaps of faulty equipment. 3.6 is simply the highest number their low-level dosimeters go to. The real radiation level on the roof where the firefighters stand is not 3.6. It is 15,000 Roentgen, a fatal dose in seconds. These men are heroes, and they are already dead. For 9 days, the reactor burns. It is a nuclear dragon breathing a continuous, invisible fire of iodine-131, strontium-90, and cesium-137 across Ukraine, Belarus, and all of Europe. Moscow is silent for 2 days, until the Forsmark nuclear plant in Sweden detects the radiation and traces it back to the Soviet Union. The world knows. The lies must stop, and the fire must be contained. A desperate, brutal plan is formed. They cannot spray it with water. That would create more radioactive steam. They must choke it, smother it, from the air. The mission is to drop 5,000 tons of sand, boron, lead, and clay directly into the reactor's core. Boron to absorb neutrons and stop the chain reaction. Lead to shield the radiation, sand and clay to smother the fire. But this means flying a helicopter directly over the open, melting down reactor. It is a mission that has never been attempted. A call goes out to the Soviet Air Force's best pilots, many of whom were veterans of the war in Afghanistan. They are gathered. They are mobilized as liquidators. They are told simply to serve the motherland. This is the story of the suicide pilots. Their machines, Mi-8 and Mi-6 heavy transport helicopters. Their mission, fly in, hover, and drop. It sounds simple. It was anything but. The reactor core was still superheated to over 2,000 degrees Celsius. The air above it was a column of thermal updraft and radioactive poison. The pilots had to fly through this. They had minimal protection. Some crews, in desperation, lined the floors of their helicopters with lead plates, a thin, almost useless shield against the gamma rays. The radiation was so intense it was called the X-ray of God. It fried the helicopter's electronics, causing gauges to spin wildly. Pilots described the heat as being like flying over an open volcano. The cockpit windows would blister. They could not stay long. just a few seconds. Fly in, hover over the churning, smoking maw, drop the 80-kilogram bag of sand or lead, and bank hard, flying away. Then they would land, often vomit, and get in line to go again. 800 individual sorties were flown in the first days. 800 trips into the heart of the apocalypse. Each trip, another dose. Each trip, a gamble with their lives. The pilots were not soldiers fighting an enemy they could see. They were fighting an invisible killer, and the cost was immediate and terrible. After a single day's flying, many returned with the nuclear tan, a deep bronze-red burn on their faces and necks, a sign of a massive, fatal radiation dose. This was not a sunburn. It was the skin itself, dying. Then came the sickness, uncontrollable vomiting, headaches, a profound weakness. This was the first stage of acute radiation syndrome, or ARS. Their bodies had absorbed too much. General Nikolai Antoshkin, who commanded the air operation from the front, flying with his men, watched them get sick. He watched them die. The Soviet state, for a time, celebrated them as heroes, and then tried to forget them. Of the pilots who flew those first, most dangerous missions, many were dead within a few years. Cancers, leukemia, organ failure. They were buried in lead-lined coffins, their bodies still too radioactive. They knew the risk, or at least they learned it very quickly. They flew anyway. They were the first to buy the time, with their own lives, that was needed to contain the beast. But the battle was not over. The pilots' heroic act had created a new, even more terrifying threat. The 5,000 tons of material they dropped had choked the fire, but it had also acted like a blanket, insulating the core. The nuclear fuel, sand, and lead had melted together into a radioactive lava called corium, and this molten mass at 2,000 degrees was melting its way down. Directly beneath the reactor were the bubbler pools, massive reservoirs holding thousands of tons of cooling water. If this white-hot corium lava hit that water, it would trigger a thermal steam explosion. Scientists calculated it would have the force of a 3 to 5 megaton nuclear bomb. It would have vaporized the entire plant, including the other 3 reactors. It would have made half of Europe uninhabitable for a century. The water had to be drained. A call went out for 3 volunteers, 3 men who knew the plant's layout. 3 men to walk into the flooded, pitch-black, highly radioactive basement and find 2 small valves. The divers were Alexei Ananenko, an engineer who knew where the valves were, Valery Bezpalov, another engineer, and Boris Baranov, a soldier, to hold the light. They suited up in diving gear and plunged into the darkness. The water in the basement was already contaminated, radioactive. Their lights failed. They moved in total blackness, feeling their way along the pipes. They found the valves. They turned them. They heard the sound of water rushing out. The pools began to drain. Against all odds, the 3 men emerged, and despite the legends, they all survived the initial mission, though their health was severely impacted. Their act of bravery averted the second greater catastrophe. Their sacrifice and the sacrifice of the pilots before them finally gave the engineers the chance they needed. With the fire out and the water gone, the agonizing years-long work of building the sarcophagus, a massive concrete and steel shell to entomb the reactor, could begin. The liquidators, 600,000 of them, paid for our safety with their lives and their health. They were not a suicide squad. They were heroes in the truest, most terrifying sense of the word. They walked into the darkness so that the rest of us could live in the light.